In this beginner tutorial, we will teach you the fundamentals to start using the Procedural Content Generation tool inside Unreal Engine. Most tutorials online will show you how to make a forest with this tool and call it a day. But don't worry, we will go past that and teach you how you can use that knowledge to create a small village. If you want to support all the free content that we're putting here, you're welcome to join as a member of this channel. Now, if you want to support us and also learn at the same time, be sure to check out our action game course, which will take you from beginner to professional. Also, let me tell you about something new we're launching. We are now offering private one-on-one coaching. If you're interested in environment art or programming inside Unreal, then we will help you become a better game developer faster. Let's start by creating a project. Choose Games, Blank, and Blueprint. Just call it whatever you like and create the project. We need to activate the PCG plugin. So let's search for it. Here it is the Procedural Content Generation Framework. Let's just click on it and restart the editor. Depending on the version of your engine, you may not need to do this. If we open the content drawer, we will see that we have a folder called Starter Content. If you don't have it, you can add it by going here and add feature or content pack. Here in content, you will find the starter content and you can add it to the project. From this content, we will be using the fire. So we're just setting up the assets that will be needed later. For this tutorial, I will be using the Aleartes Studios Demonic Village assets. You can get this asset as a part of the Hypervaganza bundle they are offering for a limited time. Use our affiliate link with the offer code UNF50 to get a huge discount, and also support us in the process. In this bundle, you will get environments, props, tools, SFX, vehicles, and even tutorials. Make sure to check it out, and if you use our link, 10 lucky developers will get a free 1-month premium subscription in the artist marketplace, Cosmos. After downloading the asset, make sure you extract it. Then just copy the folder inside the content folder, this one, Demonic Village, copy it, find the folder of your project, and paste it inside the content folder of your project. If you get this message, just ignore it and don't import. Now we have all the content needed for this tutorial, but in case you're not using this asset, you can also follow along by just using the Quixel content. So if we're using trees, just search for trees. Select the one that you like and download it. Make sure you're signed in here so you can get stuff for free. Make sure to check out also the marketplace for free assets that you can use for this tutorial. With our assets sorted out, let's begin by creating a blank level. It's going to be an empty open world. I'm going to quickly add some lights using the environment light mixer. Just click on everything and you should be fine. Let's create the landscape where our village will be on top of. So let's just use the default and click on create. Let's go back to the selection mode and you will see this message. The no loaded regions means that nothing in our level is loaded using the world partition. So let's just select an area near us, right click and load region from selection. This will mean that whenever we open the level again, this region will be loaded. Otherwise, you may open this level and find nothing in it. So let's save this level. Let's create a folder for our stuff. Let's open that folder and let's give it a name. Let's save it. Now I'm going to select my landscape. Make sure you're selecting this one. And we're going to change the landscape material to the one you can find inside Demonic Village, Materials, Master Material, and Landscape Material. So with this selected, I can go here and choose it. Now we need to go to Landscape again, Paint, and here we need to create this layer info. If you are using the asset, you may already have ones. So let's use them. If you're not using this asset pack, we already have tutorials on how to create your own landscape master material. Be sure to check it out in the description. In this menu, you can play around with the different layers this material offers. For now, I will just leave it like it is. Let's go back to the selection mode, and we will start by creating the trees. In our folder, we will create a PCG graph. I will call it PCG Forest, and let's open it. This is the PCG editor, and in order for me to see anything, I will need to drag and drop my graph into the level. So let's do that. This will be the volume that will be affected by anything that I do here in this graph. Just for clarity, here in Window, I will open a new viewport. And this viewport, I'm going to just dock it to this part. And I will choose my PCG Forest editor here. I will close this because I just need to see this part. Let's start with something basic, like spawning trees. Before spawning anything, I need to get data about the landscape. So let's do that. Search for Get Landscape Data, and you will get this node. If we right-click on the node, all the PCG nodes have these node actions: enable, debug, and inspect. If we choose debug, or by pressing that D key, you will see all the points that are generated by this data. Let's just disable it now, because those are a lot of points. But that is the data that we are getting. We don't really want to use that data in its entirety. Just sample some parts. Right-click and search for the surface sampler and connect it to the data that we have here. Now if we press D, we will see that we are getting some points inside the volume that we have defined. This is the basic foundation of everything, or most of the things that we will be doing with PCG. So if you have understood everything thus far, then you're already half the way of becoming a master. To spawn some trees, we need the node called Static Mesh Spawner. Let's connect it. And nothing has happened, but we haven't defined which mesh do we want to use. So we need to go here in this details panel, and here in mesh entries, we're gonna add a new entry. Let's go to the descriptor, and here in static mesh, in my content drawer, I'm going to search for the tree mesh. Should be on meshes and foliage. And here we should be able to find the SM tree. Let's select it. And now we have spawned a lot of trees. What I wanted to show you is that in every point that we had in our sample, let's just disable this. In every point, we are spawning a mesh. So these points are the reference where our trees are going to appear. Now, we will be messing around with the properties that we have here. So in order for it to not take too much space out of my screen, here in details, I'm going to just dock it to the sidebar. Click on the surface sampler, go to the details panel, and in looseness, we can tweak the value to 3. You will see that the lower it is, the closest the points are. The higher it is, then it gets a little bit less dense. The value I'm going to use is 3. Now, talking about density, you will see that there are certain colors to these points. Those are the values of the density of these points. The higher the value, the whiter it is. So if it's 1, it's white. If it's 0, then it's black. Using that density value, it's a great way to filter some points. Search for density and select the density filter. Connect it to the out pin of this surface sampler, and let's enable the debug here and disable the debug by pressing the key D. Now this density filter, if we go to the details panel, it will have a lower bound and an upper bound. The higher we put it, then the more points we are filtering. And we can do that for the lower bound and the upper bound. The value I will be using is 0.85 and 1. Now, why am I using this type of filter if I only have 1 point, right? Well, it's because I don't want my forest to be that dense. And also, I don't want my forest to only be inside this volume. Here in the surface sampler, I'm going to go back to the details panel and click on unbounded. This will spawn, or well, put those points on all of my landscape. So be a little bit careful whenever you just choose unbounded because it can take a toll on your PC. I'm going to disconnect this by alt clicking on it, or you can just right click and break this link and connect it again with my density filter in the middle. Now I'm going to enable it. I'm going to press the E key, and there we have it. Some forest that it's not that dense. What I'm noticing now is that I'm spawning the same tree at the same scale, at the same rotation. We need to break the pattern a little bit. Search for the node called transform points, and let's connect it. Let's not debug the density filter, let's debug the transform points. Let's go to the details panel, and here we can change the offset location by a minimum and a maximum. It will choose a random value between this range. What I want is the rotation. Let's just change the C value to 360. Now our points have rotated, our meshes not, because we have not connected them correctly. So let's connect them, and now we can see that it will actually change the rotation if we just zero it out and then 360. Perfect. I also want to change the scale, so the maximum scale will be 2. Now we have broken a little bit of the pattern that this forest has. To break the pattern even more, let's use another mesh for the tree. Let me just stop debugging the transform points. And in the static mesh spawner, in the details panel, in the mesh entries, let's add another one. Here, the descriptor, let's change that static mesh for this other tree. Now we have this spooky tree, right? But I don't really want that much of spooky trees. I want more normal trees than spooky ones, right? We can mess around with the distribution. Let's go back to the static mesh spawner. And here, let's close the descriptor. In weight, we can change how much weight each mesh has. So if I want this tree to have more weight, to appear more in eye level, we can put a value like 50. And you will see that some of my trees were replaced by the other ones. And I think 50 may be too much. So I'm going to leave it at 30. Nice. What you just learned is some of the most fundamental stuff in PCG. We are just getting some points, transforming them, and then spawning stuff on top of them. Sounds pretty simple, but it can get very complicated very quickly. Now I'm going to speed up a little bit because you already know how it goes. So let me finish my walking break and I'll get back to the tutorial. I'm back to the main screen, and it's a good idea to have a point of reference in terms of scale. I'm going to add the third person character just by going here and adding a new feature. Let's choose third person and then add to project. Let's drag and drop it to our level. And here in the possess, let's search possess. In auto possess player, I'll choose player 0. Now when I press play, I'm possessing the character and I will have a good idea on how everything is looking from my player's perspective. Now I want to create a village. We have the forest, but we need a village. And in the space that the village will be spawned in, I really don't want to have forest in it. We need to define an area that I will be using as the area of the village, right? For this, we're going to use splines. I'll also be teaching you a new way of using the PCG volumes inside the blueprint. So let's search for our folder. Let's create a new blueprint. Let's select actor and let's call it blueprint village. Open it. This tab, I'm going to drop it here in my main tab. And in the village, I need a spline. Let's add and search for spline. We have it here. And if you don't know what a spline is, well, this is it. A spline is just a bunch of points that we can change in real time also. If we hold Alt and drag, we create another point in my spline, and you can see that we can create very interesting shapes. With this shape, I want to, well, determine the space of the village that I will be spawning in. So I just did for now 4 points. Let me just Control C, and I will move this point just by selecting it. I'm going to move it forwards a little bit, then Alt and to the right, Alt again, down, and I need to close this spline. In order for me to do it, I need to go to the details panel, and here in spline, let's check closed loop. Now we have an area that I will be using as my village area. Let's save and compile. Now I do need to use the PCG here so we can know exactly which spline I'm talking about whenever I'm saying, oh, I want to spawn a village here. Let's add, type PCG, and here this component is going to ask me for the graph that I'm going to be using, which I have not created yet. So let's create that. Right click, PCG, PCG graph. This will be PCG Village. Save it and let's use it here. Compile and save. Now let's add it to our level. Just drag and drop it and it will do the trick. Here is our new village space. Now I think it's too little, so whenever you're working with these splines, here in the details panel, you can choose the spline, and here you can select even the spline points. In my case, I want to select this one and the next one, so I'll click here, something like this. And then here, and the previous one, something like that. Also, you can use Control click, and that will also work. Now I have defined the area that I want stuff to happen. Let's open our graph, our village graph. This one, I'm going to use it the same way that I have been using the other two. Here. And let me dock the details panel. And in my second viewport, I'm going to show my village, right? Perfect. In this graph, we're gonna do something similar to before. We want to get the data, but this time from a spline. So let's search for get spline data. This node have also other details that we can change. In this case, we're gonna leave it like it is. From here, we want to sample data, and we will search for the spline sampler. Let's connect it and press D to debug it. We're not seeing anything, but it's because the points are too small. We can go to the details panel, and here in debug, scale method, absolute, and increase it, you will be able to see the actual points of our spline. And just take in consideration, it's not just the points that we created, because we just created 4 points, but also some points between the lines and well, between our created points. Let me just return everything to normal and continue. Also, if you're not seeing anything, the way this is working, we're getting spline data from self. This means that in our blueprint, where our PCG graph is, that is self. And that means that we are searching for a spline inside our components. And that's how it's getting that information. I don't just want to generate points on the outside of the line or, well, on top of the spline. I want to generate points inside. So here in the details panel, in dimension, instead of on spline, I'll choose on interior. We have some points here on top of the spline, but I want it to be unbounded. That way we are using everything inside the spline. Now the points are very near to each other, so I don't really want that, because if I spawn some houses on top of it, then it's going to get very messy. So we're going to change the interior sample value and the interior border value. Let's use the value 3000 and here 400. As you can see, this is increasing the bounds of those points, and this is decreasing the amount of points that are actually being spawned. So that's the interior sample spacing and the border sample space. For now, let's spawn some houses. In this asset pack, I have some meshes that can serve me to create some houses of my own, but it's a good idea if I just use the blueprints that already come with this package that have some houses created for me. So we have this house that I want to spawn. This is a blueprint. So instead of using a static mesh spawner, we're gonna use an actor one. Spawn actor, connect it here, go to the details panel and choose my template actor class. Here we have the houses. I mean, they look alright for now. If you're not using the asset pack, this is just a blueprint that has a house in it. You can create your own using the meshes from Quixel. But yeah, it's very, very simple actually. It's just a little bit of time that you will need to spend here. Here we have a very apparent problem. We have some trees that are spawning near my houses, and in the worst case scenario, they are spawning on top of it. And that's not good. I don't want any trees inside my village unless I specifically put it there. To do something about it, I need to go to the graph of my forest. Here in my graph, I need to get rid of any point that is inside this spline. To do that, we need to get the spline data. Then we need to sample the points inside of the spline. So we need the sampler. Let's connect it. And in the sampler, we already know that we need to put the on interior and unbound. Let's debug it and let's see what happened. Well, nothing. Nothing happens because the spline data that I'm trying to get is trying to find it inside the volume of this PCG Forest graph. And there is none, no spline data. So I need to get it here in the details from this filter. We can have a lot of options. What I want is all world actors. Now it's going to search for the splines in the world, and we need to say if it's going to be by tag or by class. For now, we can choose by class, we can choose our village, which was BP Village. And now we will see the points being generated. Now it's as easy as using a node called difference. The source will be the points that we had before, and the differences will be the new points that we have gotten here. Let's debug it, and now we see that we have all the points outside of my spline. It's just a matter of, okay, disconnecting this density filter here and putting it here. You can see there is a small conversion there, but now our trees do not spawn inside of our very lame village. But don't worry, it's not going to stay lame. Also, it's a good idea to not forget to save everything. Return to the village graph. In our path, you will see that we have a church, we have houses, and also we have meshes for a cemetery. This cemetery is like a destination that you should only have one in one village, right? The same as the church. If I go to a village and there is more than one church, it's going to be a little weird. So what we're going to do is designate two areas at almost random, but not exactly at random, to define where to put the church and when to put the cemetery. I'll disable the spawning for now. And I want to filter some points. We used the density before in the forest to filter stuff, but this spline sampler, if you see the colors, everyone has a 1 in the value of the density. We can change that by messing around with this curve, like adding different values. If it's near the edge, it's going to be a lower value. If it's near the middle, maybe a higher value, or maybe the ones in between. But this is not going to really help me that much. I want it to be a lot more random. We can do that by using this node. Just search for noise. You're going to find attribute noise, density noise. For this case, it's going to work the same. It may change, and this goes for a lot of the nodes here in this tutorial. Because the tool is in development, the names may change in the future. Just take in consideration that what we're doing is adding some noise to the nodes. In this case, noise in the density, which will look like this. If I connect it and start debugging it, then you will see that at random, we have some density. Now we're gonna use the filter we already know. Connect it and set the value to 0.9 and 1. Now you see that we have 3 points. Using these 3 points, I want to get 1 point, so I'm going to combine them. So search for combined points, add it, and just connect it. If we see how it's looking, it's going to give me something like this. This is fine. Now I need to spawn the actor, and well, connect it, and choose which actor to spawn. I'm going to use the church. So let's select it and use it in my template actor class. Now I will have a church here. We don't really need to debug this. Spawn the actor. And there we have it. Here in the combined points, I can mess around if I want it to be the center pivot or not, or if I want to use the first point transform or not. In this case, doesn't make much difference because it's going to get the same 3 points. So with that, we have gotten any number of points really, it could be more or less, and we're spawning one actor of one type. If we use this other actor, now we are getting a new mesh on our village. It will be a good idea to get some random rotation here, so we'll do the same that we have done before. The trusty transform points. Here, let's connect it by dragging it, by holding Control and dragging it here. and the out in the in. The transform in rotation max, it's going to be again 360. Now we have uh, something more interesting, right? Now we need to take in consideration that something like this can happen. A house is spawned inside a church, which is not good. To fix it, we kind of already know what to do. We know we need to do difference, and we need a source. The source will be after we do everything with the noise. So I'll connect the source here. And the difference is it's going to be the points that are being used for this church. Now, right now I'm getting something weird, which shouldn't happen. Uh, Sometimes PCG misbehaves like this. You just need to disable and enable. So the letter E. Now we have it like it's supposed to be. Right, so the combined points, this box is too big and it could be even bigger because if those points are, let's say, on each corner, then it will cover all of my village, which I don't really want. So I'm going to reduce the size of this box. Or well, this point. We just need to do a bound modifier. This bound modifier, I'm going to reduce it to 0.4 in all the values. Going to copy this attribute, paste it here. Great. Now I want to, let me just do this again. I want to remove any point that is inside this bound. So from this, these will be the differences. And now if I put the debug here, you will see the points where this should be spawning. And you will see that there is no longer a point near my bounds modifier. So just to clean this up, let's connect this way. This spawn actor is going to be disconnected and connected after doing the difference, right? So again, if it's misbehaving, just enable it and disable it, and the same can be done here. There it goes. Yeah, it's very weird that sometimes it's happening. Just go to a command root and disable, then enable again, and it's going to refresh, actually refresh it correctly. So now we have our church that is not colliding with anything. It will be a good idea to leave some comments. So just select the nodes, press the letter C and add your comment. This is the spawning of the church. What I'm gonna do now is spawn more buildings. I'm gonna do it just once and then you will know that it's just the same process for every building. I cannot put more than one building here because it's a template actor class and I cannot change this into an array and make it a lot of actors. So, well, I just need to do a little bit of copy pasting. So for now, let's just disable this. I'm gonna use these nodes, not nodes, but points. These points are going to be my buildings. And I have a lot of buildings, or well, 4. I mean, it's more than enough for me, right? So we have these 3, 4. The way I'm going to spawn a building is doing something similar to the church, but actually using the points that I'm going to filter. So the points that I'm going to filter are here. So filter by density. The value that I'm going to choose, if my first filter is 0. If the first filter is 0.9 and 1, then this one will be from 0.8 and 0.9. Now if I check my new filter, we should be getting something here. And if you're not getting anything, then we can lower the lower bound till we see something. So 0.6, let's put it like that. Now we can see the new points. And from here, it's the same as always. Just spawn an actor, choose the actor to spawn. In my case, it will be the house. Let's go from 4 to 3 to 1, well, to 2 to 1. And here, select it. Now we have more houses. And I'm just going to do the same. But the only difference is here, I'm just going to copy and paste the density filter. And my new upper bound will be this one. So 0.6. And the new lower bound maybe 0.4. Now you will see that we have new points, and these points are not the same ones that have been used before. And that's an important part because we really don't want to spawn the same building twice or different buildings in the same position. So I'm just going to copy and paste and show you the finished result for this part. Now I finished copying and pasting all the values, so here in my details panel, I'm just gonna pin it so we can see it very easily without me having to open the menu multiple times. So we can remove this spawn. These are the buildings. First density filter, we already know it, 0.6 to 0.9. Spawn actor, we spawn the house 4. Here, lower bound, 0.4 to 0.6, so I'm continuing from this lower bound to this upper bound and so on and so forth. And I'm only changing the spawn actor in each node, 0.3 and 0.1. Perfect. So now this is how it's looking. We have different buildings in different orientations. Right now, the thing about my village is that there is too much order in the way the houses are built. So we need to change that. Let me just unpin this and go here in the transform points. Not only will I change the the rotation, but also I will change the offsets. I will play with these values. Let's just say minus 1000, minus 1000, and in offset max it will be 1000 and 1000. Now it's looking more like a village that was built on zero planning. You can play a lot with these values to get whatever you're looking for. And also it's a lot easier if you debug it first with these nodes, and then you see the finished result here, right? Something like this becomes a lot apparent. How are you changing the actual points? But because we already have this, I mean, it's a lot easier to visualize the final product with meshes. Now I want to add the cemetery, so the first things that I'm gonna be doing is changing the bounds here so I can have a little bit of space for that cemetery. So here, instead of 0.6, it's going to be 0.7, and I'm going to change every bound by 1. And with that done, I'm going to again copy and paste the density filter. This will be 0 and 0.1. This will be the filter, like similar for the church, where I'll be combining the points, adding the bound modifier, and spawning something. Here we have those points. I'm going to combine them. Here is the combination of those points. And now I'm going to spawn stuff. So we have the static mesh spawner, because I just noticed that my cemetery is not a blueprint. So we have multiple meshes that can work for this. But that means that this type of behavior is not going to work because this combination of points is only giving me 1 point. And if I just add the mesh entry, like we always do, for example, this, then what I'm getting is something here in the middle, which is not exactly what I want. What I'm gonna do is create points near this point, and using those points is the way that I'm going to spawn stuff. So instead of doing this from the combine point, which is just 1 point, I'm going to first, I don't want to use the center pivot, just in case my points are on the side. I don't really want to keep it on the center. I prefer the church to be on the center. And yeah, we can play around with the rotation and the transform. But to generate points around this point, which is like a big point, we need to use this node, create points grid. So create points grid right now is not going to show me anything because it is using the coordinate space global. So it's somewhere on the 0, 0, 0 probably. What I want to do here is copy the points to my current point. So choose copy points. We need a source and a target. The target is the point that I already have, and the source will be the points that I'm creating. Now let's debug it, and we have something here. We have some points. Now, we cannot see them because they are very close together. Again, we can change the way we debug it by choosing absolute and then reducing the points, and I have been changing it here, and it's supposed to be here in the copy points. Absolute and 0.5, let's put it like this. We can see the points there. Again, you can do it if you want to visualize it, it's fine. But what now I want to do is use those points to spawn stuff, right? I want my cemetery to use these points. These points will be driven by my copy points and the grid that I have created. So the grid that I want to use is 1, 5, 0, 0, and I'll copy this value on everything here. And maybe not in the C value, 500. We now know how things work, so it's very easy for me to just explain it quickly. So let's transform the points. And these transform points in the offsets is -100, and the offset max is 100. Rotation max 360. Oh, this should be 360. Perfect. And now we are getting something more interesting. Now some of them are colliding with each other, and if I spawn meshes, they're going to probably collide. So there is a node called prune. Well, self pruning. Now this is going to get rid of the colliding points. After this, let's spawn some actors. So let's put this here. We have this, well, type of actor that we can use. And if we want to change how near each other these are, we can change the cell size to something of our liking. So something like 200 should do the trick a lot better. Right, So we are spawning stuff. We really need to bury the static mesh. Again, we have a lot of them. So what I'm going to do is the same steps that we always do. We just add a new item in the descriptor. The descriptor will change this mesh, and then let me just pin it, select it, and I'm going to do this for every mesh that I have here. Okay, now whenever we're spawning meshes, it's a good idea to tell the engine if they're going to be able to move or not, just for optimization purposes. So here in every single item, make sure that in mobility you are setting it to static. If it's not going to move, then set it as a static. And yeah, you need to do that for everyone. Now, the only thing that I'm gonna do now that I'm gonna pause the video is just duplicate stuff and change the static mesh. So as you can see here, we have changed all the meshes to the different meshes that I had in the cemetery. So we have something like this. Now I will like to have a centerpiece of the cemetery, something like the blueprint I found here, like this ritual type of blueprint, which like is something scary. Might as well, because I mean it's a scary village. So to do that, we're going to do something similar to before. And by that I mean doing some filtering, right? So we have these points, which are then transformed, which then are pruned, and after that, nothing. We are just spawning stuff. So I want to add some density. So again, add some noise, density noise. Then we can use the filters. So again, density filter. This filter is going to be from 0.4 to 1. And I'll add another density filter, which will be from 0.0 to 0.1. The first density filter is going to be connected to my meshes. So only these points will be used instead of the other ones. And this other density filter are going to be used to spawn the actual actor. Spawn actor. And I'm going to select the one that was called ritual, I believe. Yes, there we have it. If we check our village, we can see that we have added some big stuff, some medium stuff, some not so small stuff, but what I need to add is smaller stuff. What kind of stuff our village is missing? Well, for now is too clean. I mean, this is mud, but there should be some foliage, some vegetation laying around, right? So that's what the next thing we're going to add. And it should be very easy. Why it will be easy? Well, we're gonna use the same things that we have already learned. We're going to create points in the grid around all our points, which means we'll be using the points that our houses are using. So let's search for them. It's here. This attribute noise. We have it here. Perfect. Again, it's misbehaving. Just ignore it because we can disable it and enable it and it will work again. So these attribute noises, these are the points that will be the new target. So let's create points. In a grid, these points will be 150, no, well, 1500, and this is 50. Perfect. Again, we're gonna copy those points. The source is the new points and the target is the old points. So now those are a lot of points. Again, we're going to transform points. And the points will be transformed as follow. Offset min minus 500, offset max plus 500, rotation 360. So pretty standard. Here, I really don't want to prune my points because, I mean, they're going to be leaves or rocks. So it won't matter if they are overlapping themselves. From here, we are spawning the meshes, static mesh spawner. And we're going to start with the leaves. We have some grass here, so let's use that. I'm going to pin it. Let's use it. And take in consideration that here the mobility again will be static. Not only that, but the collision presets will be no collision. I really don't want to collide with anything that I put here that I'm just passing through, like grass. Right, so we should be able to see it. And there it is. I don't know why that house is floating around and why those houses are missing some meshes. Probably whenever I open and close my level, it will work correctly. But the things that I want to show you was these leaves, right? Now we have all around. I mean, it's not that really noticeable unless we play the game. Okay, so now I'm able to play around and now I can see the meshes. Yeah, I'm really not sure what's happening here. Well, it's weird. Now it's working. So, yep. Just PCG being PCG. I just restarted everything and in my graph just enable some stuff. Enable and disable worked as expected, like I said before. Now that everything is working, let's finish this. Let's go to the static mesh spawner, this one up top. You should probably comment this by saying this will be the foliage stuff. Static mesh spawner, and I will add the other grass that I have in my asset pack, which again is in the foliage folder. So we have this type of grass. I'm going to add some leaves, some rocks, maybe not sticks, but this tall grass, yes, and maybe some wheat. So yeah, I'm gonna pause the video and do that. I'm not sure how many of these I'm going to add, but we will see. This is how it's looking with only the grass. Now this is how it looks with some rocks. And this is how it looks with some wheat. Now there were some assets that I wanted to use that I found. Where did I find it? Here in hay. Especially this one. Because right now if I just zoom out, it's not that noticeable. I mean, it's a little bit because of those leaves. But I want to have some hay. And again, I need to enable and disable stuff in order for it to work. I not only want some foliage. Oh, and I forgot about the long wheat. Yeah, I'm gonna add it right now. There we have it, some tall grass. And sometimes, whenever you're using this static mesh spawner, you want less of a thing. In this case, I want less of this tall grass than the other stuff, right? I prefer to have some rocks. So you can change how this behaves by just changing the weight. For example, if I only wanted a lot of width, I can increase the weight by a lot. Now, I will have a lot of this type of width whenever I'm spawning stuff, right? In my case, I mean, in the perfect world, I should be able to go here, tall grass, and the weight set it to 0.1. But if I set it to 0.1, it goes to 0. So this weight is not bounded to 0 and 1. This means that if I want to fix this, then I will leave this at 1. And all my tall grass is already at 1. And all the other things will be needed to change. So yeah, this means that I will need to copy and paste, for example, let's say 50. And this 50, I will need to paste it for all of these other meshes. And I mean, it's not that hard. And this is something that I will also need to do whenever I want to spawn the hay. Now, you can see there is tall grass, but not that much. I find it good enough. And the other thing that I wanted to add is let's add a new mesh entry, and we can shift click here and click on it again, so everything's closed. And if we just shift click again, everything is open. Just take that in consideration. In this index, I want to spawn the hay. The hay is this one, so let's put it here. And because everything else has, I mean, this has a weight of 1, it's spawning the same times as the tall grass, which is not really good enough. Right? Before moving on, before fixing the weight, I do need to fix the mobility to static, and I do want to be blocked by this. So this is fine. So as a recap, here in the static mesh spawner, the only thing that I have done is added those mesh entries and messed around with the weight. So in all the meshes is 70. For the tall grass, 50. Could be even lower. I mean, I find it too noisy right now. So yeah, it could be even 30 for all those tall grasses. And it seems I missed this one. And the hay. And the hay, the last one, is just 1. Because I don't really want that much of hay laying around. Now our village has a lot of stuff that it is doing, but it's still not feeling like something playable. We will need to start working on that last part, on that 20% of polishing our product. Which means that, okay, let's start touching the landscape. By touching the landscape, I mean going here in the landscape mode and start sculpting stuff. Yeah, because if I'm just seeing this, it's very plain, right? There are not that much of elevations, so might as well create some of them. Now you will see, and this is something that will happen or was going to happen eventually, that we are making our terrain grow, but what's happening with our trees, right? They are not being projected to the actual landscape, which is the thing that we need to fix right now. So let's go back to the selection, and we will need to open our previous graph. So let's open our graph of the forest. Here we have some forest being overlapped by the terrain. The only thing we need to do is force the regeneration. And there we have it. Now, sometimes you may not want your tree to grow like this. In this case, go to landscape data and get height only. We could add a little bit of rotation to our trees, so maybe they are pointing a little bit to the side, but the mesh already has that. So just by rotating it, it's doing a lot for us. And sometimes, again, you may get this, right? So just remember that you can transform those points and maybe add a little bit of negative value to the C value. That way you won't see the actual root of the tree, or maybe a little bit of it, right? So those are the trees. Just take in consideration every time you are messing around with them, creating some mountains, you will need to regenerate the PCG. So what I'm gonna do now is just that, add a little bit of mountains here. I'm going to be using the noise tool. Probably play this at 3 times the speed. So here it is, with some mountains, something that you can at least see that it's not just plain. And if I play the game, should be even more noticeable. So here it is, me playing the game. Pretty good. I will also add a little bit of elevation to my village. So let's go to the landscape, sculpt, and you will want to work with a lower tool strength, right? And also a lower brush size. Just so you have, for example, a path where this is a little bit higher, while this part is a little bit lower. And now we're facing a problem. The problem is that some trees appeared. So what's happening here? And let's just go back to the graph. Here's the cemetery. Here's my forest graph. The difference is that this spline sampler no longer is making a difference. Yeah, so it's not longer subtracting. Why? Because the bounds are small. So we need to increase those bounds. We already know how to do it. It's with the bound modifier. So the bound modifier, what it will do, well, just put 50 here in the minimum and 50 in the maximum. Now you can see the actual bounds. Perfect. Now we just need to connect that to the differences so we don't have that issue. Now we have another issue. The houses and also the cemetery are not affected by the terrain. So we need to project this to our terrain, and it's very easy to do. Let me save everything. Yes, don't forget to save. So we will go part by part. where are my houses created, or where is my cemetery created? This is my cemetery, so just don't forget cemetery. Don't forget to comment it. So here, we just need to do a little bit of trickery. And before doing that trickery, I tricked myself. This is actually the foliage. See, that's why it's so important to comment your code. This is the cemetery, right? Yes, this is the cemetery. So we have the points here that we are using. Let's just debug them. Are there. What we need to do is project them to this landscape. So let's just do that. There already exists a node called projection. This projection needs points, so let's feed it points. This projection also needs a target. The target will be the landscape data. So let's get the landscape data. And let's see how they are projected now. Now there are points that are projected on top of my landscape. So these are the ones that we can use now. So we already transformed them. Let's just connect them here. So I'll disconnect it and connect it here. And now my cemetery actually, and in this case it's floating, but it actually works. Now, if we don't want it to float, just remember that, well, you can transform the points again, or just in case you don't want this to happen, you can go to the landscape data and again only get the heights. Yeah. And just for good measure, it's a good idea to transform the points again and just reduce it. The offset, just a little bit, -20 should be good. So let's connect it like this. And now we shouldn't be able to see any floating type of grave. Pretty good. Let me just do this. Let's also fix the buildings, because this is an inherent problem that is happening right now. If we see where does these points are coming, they're coming from this get spline data. This get spline data does not have the information of the surface. That's why here in the forest that it's using the landscape data was so easy to just, oh, let's just force a regeneration and that's it. But in the case of the village, because most of the data is coming from a spline, and that spline, we can't even see it. Well, we can see it barely here, right? So those points are not taking in consideration the surface. So after we transform them, we should be able to just copy and paste this, the projection, and just connect it like this. Just take in consideration this landscape data is only using the height because I don't want my houses to be like this. Also, it would be a good idea to, well, mess around a little bit with the transform points in order for us to just put these houses a little bit to the floor. So I just disconnected this part. The way I'm gonna connect it is before transforming, I'm just gonna put this here, transform here, and in here, and then in this transform, because we're already transforming stuff, might as well do this -50 here and -50 here. Yeah, a lot better. I don't think no one's gonna notice this, and if it's like too much of a pain point, then I might as well come with my landscape tool and fix it. Right. So we have still a problem here with the foliage, and that's because we're creating points, and these points are not being projected by anything. See, these points are floating. So again, we can copy and paste this projection, which might as well organize it a little bit. Copy and paste this projection. Gonna do it again before the transform. And now we have it. Right, wrong. Oh, in this case, this landscape data, I do want to follow the actual tangent of the floor. So let me just remove height only. See what happens now. And then it's just a matter of transforming them a little bit. But well, it seems that where's my floating rocks? Here they are. It seems that if you do it before the transform, you get this result, which floating stuff all around. But if we do it after the transform, which makes more sense, we actually get it right. We actually get some meshes sticking to the floor, which was what we wanted at the start. So now let's fix a little bit of this part of the graph. So here's my foliage working correctly. My houses are also working correctly, right? I mean, this doesn't seem like it. This is probably a job for my trusty, where was it? My trusty landscape tool, especially when things are this obvious. I mean, for sure, go to the landscape, search for the flatten, and try to flatten it a little bit. Yeah, and then you can smooth this out very quickly, just so it's not that noticeable. Yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. So now we have fixed most of our issues, or probable or possible issues that we could find whenever we start playing around with the landscape. Next should be the floor. The floor is really bumming me out. It's just mud. Go to the landscape, paint, and you will have these, well, layers that we can add on top. Again, we have a tutorial on how to create this type of setup. Landscape materials, search that. And yeah, it's just a matter of choosing what to have and then start adding it to your level. So I'm going to play around with it. I'm not really going to do a time lapse because of reasons. So let me just pause the video and show how it ends. So I have played around a little bit. The wet is like the base for the city. The dry, I have used it for the roads that the village, actually not city, that the village could have. The vegetation are for everything around it, and then the wet, I just put it in random places so it's not always dry, like in this part, like a little bit of wet material. So yeah, that's how it's looking now. Should be looking a little bit more different, just a little bit. The next thing is what actually will make a lot of difference. It's the lighting. Right now it's not a creepy village if it's all sunny out, right? So let's change that. By using Ctrl plus Alt plus the letter L, we get this gizmo that lets you control how your sun is going to be. So might as well look a little bit to the sky, just for me in order to see it. The sun is there. So Control Alt L, we should be able to see what's happened. Now I want to make it dark. Not that dark, but dark enough. Something like this. I'll click here, so I'm getting a better vibe of it. I mean, it's a little bit bluish, or not bluish, purplish. So it's not exactly what I need. But if I just put it there, it no longer have any light. This is the magic of Lumen. Yeah, so something like this, that would be good enough. Now what I'm gonna do with with all the buildings is add some lights to some of them. So let me go to the blueprints found in this pack. If you have created your own blueprint, then you should be able to do the same. I'm just adding some lights, point lights, and that point light will be near some windows. And that's not near the window. Let's just test it like this. Right. File save. Let's see if I can find a building with the actual lights. Let's go to the graph. Here, this is the house 3. If you have collapsed actors, then your light is not going to appear. If you put no margin, then the light will appear. So I will need to do that for every actor that has a light. In my case, only this house has a light. And now I should be able to put it inside. And now you can see that, oh, that room specifically is lit up. But maybe it's too much. It's definitely too much, and it's definitely in a color that doesn't suit my mood. So let me change the color a little bit to maybe something a little yellowish or more orange than anything. More orange. And maybe another light would be good. Let me just duplicate this and put it to another window. I mean, you can play around with it however you like. Save, and now it's looking a lot better. A lot better. Now that some of the houses are hosting raves. Yeah, the intensity is definitely too much. So I'll just put 1000 and 1000 here also. Now that's a lot better. Just a few of the reflections on the parts that are actually a little bit wet. What I'm gonna do is add a little bit of fire, like I mentioned at the start here. In the starter content, we're gonna search for the fire, which should be in the particle folder. Here is the fire. We can add it. This little fire is going to do a lot for the cemetery, which is completely dark. It's so dark, probably it's not gonna call or have or draw any attention of the player, so might as well have a little bit of light calling you. There we have it. With the N key we can snap it to the next collision. I mean, it gets you very close to the ground. And I'm going to add it also to these parts. It needs to call the player. You need to go to the cemetery one way or another. Yeah, okay, it's getting better. I mean, still, I don't like that it's so purple. We can change that with post-processing, so I'm not really that worried about it. So let's do that. Let's change it with post-processing. Let's just add a post-processing node. Let's just type here post-process. Here is a volume. This volume, if I want it to affect all my world, then it needs to be unbounded, which I can search or just, oh, here it is. Infinite extent, unbound. Nothing will happen, but it's because we haven't done anything with it. For example, let's just do something very quickly, like the temperature. Let me just change it, make it more blue. If this is not unbounded, then it's only going to work when I'm inside this post-processing volume. But in my case, I always want it to work, so this is fine. What's not fine is this color. So let me just undo this. And yeah, I will play around with it till I find something that I like, and then I will unpause the video and tell you what exactly did I change. The video is long enough for me to show you how to uh, not even show you, it will be just me playing around all the settings till I find something that I find appealing or pleasing to the eye. Now it's looking like this. Pretty good, right? I mean, I'm amazed at what I have done. And the only thing that I have added is that in the light, directional light, I changed the color. Then in the, oh, I also changed the intensity. And in the post-process volume, I increased the exposure so more light can come can come towards the camera, otherwise you won't be able to see anything. Then on lens flares, I just checked on the intensity, so we have something nice to look at. The vignette, just so we have a little bit of an interesting border. And that's pretty much it. I tried to play with these values, but it was too much for me. So yeah, this is enabled, this is disabled, it's unbounded, and that's pretty much it for the post-process volume. The only thing that maybe I could play around is the volumetric, where is it? Or not volumetric, this one, the exponential height font. This does give a lot of great results. Whenever you play around with the values, for example, the fog density, you can make it more dense or less dense. Play around with the fall off. We'll give it a little bit more of character. And yeah, start distance. I mean, how I have it right now, volumetric fog. I mean, that can also give its own vibe, right? But like it is right now, I mean, I'm pretty happy with it. But yeah, you can play a little bit around this. I mean, I just tested it with the volumetric fog and it gives it a more magical type of feeling if you play around with these values a little bit. Yeah, it's more magical, so it's not what I'm going for. Should be a little bit creepy. There it goes. Yeah, and maybe I could get a little less of those lens flares. Like they are there, but not quite. Yeah, yeah, something like that. I mean, it's just a matter of playing around with the values that you would like to change, and then finding ones that work for you. And we're pretty much done. As soon as I said so, I noticed that in this asset pack there is a fence type of tool. What if what is a fence tool? Well, let me show you. Where is it? I'll just search fence. Fence tool. You just put a fence, and I'm going to put the unlit so I can see everything. You put a fence. This is also a spline. Here is the spline. Oh, and I'm in game mode, that's why I'm not able to see it. Here's the fence, here's the spline. I can drag around the spline and it will create a fence for me. I mean, it's not going to rotate that well. We can tweak that later, but having a fence actually could bring a lot to the table. Why? Because right now my village is a little bit empty. Like if I could put a fence here, for example, let me just do it. There it is, magic. But look at it, brings a lot to the table. And if I put a fence here, and here's with some fences all around the map. I mean, if I just put unlit, you can see that I have added a lot of fences. I mean, it's not rotating properly. I mean, that tool, I just check it out. We can open it so we can actually dig deeper. If you want a tutorial on how to make a fence tool, let me know. I can probably make it. But it's very simple. In the event graph, you have nothing. In the construction script, you have everything, right? You have an instance static mesh component. This is going to add instances of the same mesh, depending if you have space for it. So we set the static mesh. So this tool, you can even change the type of fence you have. That's cool. We set the mesh. Then we are getting the bounding box. We are breaking it and making a vector just so we know what's the spacing that we need to leave between each of the static meshes, right? From that spacing, I can get the length of the spline, and from there, we can get the number of instances. If our spline is 800 and each of our meshes needs 400, then just by dividing it, we can know that we need 2 instances. Then by the number of instances, we're just looping. And well, we're getting allocation at the index, which is just a function that gets an index, I guess. Then you multiply it by the spacing. So if it's 0, then you multiply it for 0, and then so on and so forth. You get the location in a local space because, well, splines, it's a lot easier to work in the local space. Yeah, from there, we're just getting the location of the index, and then we are adding an instance. That's it, right? Yeah. Yeah, depending on where you have your your instance, then that's the rotation that it's going to give it. But I'm guessing that if you want, well, if you actually want the correct rotate, well, can't speak anymore. It's too late, and I thought that I was going to finish this tutorial faster. But okay, if you want the rotation to work in our case, then what you need to do here, just disconnect it. We are going to use the node find look at rotation. So we just need a start position and an end position, and it's going to look towards that. Yeah, it's pretty simple, but we will be using this functionality. Why? Because it already exists there, so might as well use it. So in order for this to work, we already have the location of our current mesh. So that will be the target, and the start will be the previous mesh. That previous mesh is going to be this index. I'm going to just do a -1. I mean, this is going to be an error just on the first one, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. You could probably add an if statement somewhere here, but it's late. This is what's working. So let's compile, save, and now our meshes are correct, except the first one. Yeah, the first one, probably you can just add a, a select here. Yeah, let's just do it. Select if the index is 0. I mean, if this index equals 0, oh, then we're gonna use the normal approach, and if it is false, then we're gonna use the approach that I just mentioned. Yeah, so the first one is facing correctly to where it should be facing, and the other ones are also facing to where they should be facing. Oh, and I didn't even notice that here our spline was not working as intended. So let me just fix it if I can. Alt, and here just plop it to the ground. And elevate it a little bit. Yeah, so you can do a lot of stuff with splines. Let me just put the game mode by pressing either this or just the letter G. Now we have cool splines. And oh man, we can do even more cool stuff with them. And what cool stuff am I talking about? Well, we can actually use them in our PCG. Let's open it and let me save everything. Jeez, if this crashes, I would have lost a lot of progress. Here, just like we got the spline displaying data from our blueprint, we can get displaying data from, again, all world actor, and we can use a tag. I mean, we could also use the BP fins tool, but I just wanted to show you just because uh, it will be interesting at the end. So if you want to use a tag, then go to the blueprint. I tried to add the tag here in this spline, didn't work. So go to the blueprint, search for tag, and here this will be fence. My tag called fence. Then I will go back to the map with control. Why can I? Where is my village? Here it is. Here is my village. Get spline data, tag none. This will be fence. If you're not seeing it, then don't worry. We just get the spline sampler, and from here, debug. On spline is good, subdivision no, but distance yes. Let's increment the distance, and here make sure to change the bounds. Yes, so we are able to see it. For example, let's say here 400 or 200 and 200 here. Let me just debug this. If we're not seeing it, then we may be able to see it if we just click on unbound, right? We're only just getting one. So here in the get spline data, select multiple. So now we're getting information of every spline that has the same tag, which are these ones, right? Now, the very interesting thing that we can do, and we do need to project our points in the landscape. Oh, whoa, what did I do? Oh, now we're good. Now we're projecting it to our landscape. What we can do with this, well, we can start spawning interesting stuff. For example, where was it? More foliage, especially these. Let me just search it here. These tall grasses. We can also spawn trees near our fences or cages. You get the gist of it. You can spawn whatever you like near it. I'll just spawn some foliage. So here, let's just test it. Spawn static mesh spawner. I'm going to, you already know how to do this. Yep, so I added all the tall grass here. Very simple stuff. Let me just stop that. And yeah, it's not that noticeable, but whenever we play the actual game, let the lightning come. There it goes. We will see the actual tall grass being spawned near the fences, which is cool. It makes it so it's even more integrated with the level. Don't you think? Yeah, and probably, I mean, would be a good idea doing something like we did before with the points. where we created more points in some of these points. Remember? And you can take this part as a challenge, right? We can use the same logic to create patches of this tall grass. So it's not just following the mesh, but also you can have on both sides, right? And it can be a little bit more interesting. I'm not liking my my lighting that much, but yeah, it's good enough for this tutorial, I believe. You can get more picky and you can spend a lot more time with it. It will be a good idea to do that in order for you to progress. So you remember that I told you I wasn't going to do it? Well, I did it. So yeah, it's the same approach. You can take it as a homework if you want to test what you have learned. But yeah, it makes it a lot more believable whenever you have a fence and a lot of stuff's growing. I mean, I think I went over the top. I went over the top with this transform. Maybe 0.5 here. Yeah, that's better. That's better. Let's save everything. Everything. And look how it ends up. I mean, gives it a lot more of personality. Just by applying what we already know, we can even go farther away from what you just learned in this tutorial. At the start, we were talking about some coaching that we were offering. I took mouse, offer, and look at the result. The vibe changed completely. Now it really looks like it's denied. He gave me a lot of tips, some things that I can use, like the HDRI backdrop, and also some settings with the lights and with the post process. And now I'm really digging how this is looking. So yeah, I can vouch that the actual one-on-one private coaching, it is worth it. He gave me a lot of ideas and a lot of tips on how to make it better. Well, on how to make my scene better. Also, I just wanted to tell you that something is missing in our graph. Something that we added for our foliage and for our cemetery and also for this foliage. Something is missing. If you manage to find it, leave it in the comments below. It's like a game where you put your knowledge to the test. Yeah, and before ending this video, I just wanted to ask you to leave a comment saying if you like this type of video on the subject of PCG, or maybe you would like some programming related videos. I don't know. So let me know, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.